Hey everybody, Kyle Jepson from HubSpot Academy. I'm joined today by Meerman Scott, the renowned sales and marketing strategist, keynote speaker, and author of 10 books.
10 books, Kyle.
10
how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm awesome, thanks.
I'm happy to be joined by all of you who are coming in today. We have some questions that were asked from advance from LinkedIn. We'll be going through those, but if you have any questions you'd like David to answer, drop them into the Facebook comments. We are monitoring those, and I'll pass them along.
Excellent.
But just to get us started, today we're talking about renting versus owning your content marketing.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Oh my God, renting versus owning. So broadly speaking, the idea is, should you be paying for access, paying for advertising, which in my world is kind of renting space. You can literally rent a billboard space,
yeah.
or you can rent space in a search result,
yeah.
Or you can rent something on a television station. Or own an asset that that belongs to you. So a blog post or a video or a website or some other form of content that you personally own or your organization owns. And there's big differences between how you use those things. And we're a little provocative by saying versus, rent versus own. I think maybe the right answer might be some combination of the above, but I'm a huge believer in ownership. I own 2 houses, Kyle.
Oh, wow.
I own 3 cars. It's way too many, but I try not to rent them. But every once in a while I jump in an Uber because I need one.
Right.
So it's okay now and then to do the rental thing, but I'm a big believer in owning.
Awesome. Well, that's actually an interesting point to me because I feel like long-term proponents of inbound not so very long ago would say you don't buy ad space. It's all organic. But even we at HubSpot have sort of been coming around to this notion like maybe it is okay sometimes. What has caused that change?
I think because HubSpot was so early in the idea of owning content, inbound marketing. But the inbound marketing book came out almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I wrote the foreword to that book.
Right.
And so the idea was so new and so unknown in the early days. So we had to bang the idea over people's heads and say, no, it's all wrong to be buying advertising. You don't want to do that. It's not the right thing. And it kind of to be provocative.
Yeah.
And now I think we are coming around to recognizing that there are times, even when the people who have been espousing this and evangelizing this idea, who wrote the book on this idea, right. are now saying, oh, you know what? There are a few occasions where even I will buy advertising. It's kind of rare, but it happens.
Yeah.
Just like I own cars, but I will grab an Uber sometimes.
So when do you do that?
That's interesting because there's a lot of different strategies on when and how to do it. I'm a huge believer in real-time marketing. So the idea of striking when the moment is right and being either newsjacking, drafting off of what's going on in the news, or if something is happening right now, if there's a reason that right now is important. Your biggest conference is going on at this moment. What does that mean? Oh my gosh, maybe there's an opportunity to use strategic Facebook ads or Twitter ads, or maybe it's a strategic way that a particular set of keywords might be valuable for us right now. And you could run a campaign that has a very short shelf life to drive something at a particular moment. So the idea of newsjacking, of course, is when you find something going on in the news that you have an expertise around, and then you can say, well, shoot, I'm going to comment on that because I know something about that topic. And so you do a video, you do a Facebook Live, you do a blog post, something that gets your content out into the marketplace quickly. But then you boost it. And I don't mean boost necessarily in the sense of Facebook boost, but it could be a Facebook boost. But
right.
you push it out even further than it would go naturally by buying targeted ads because it's important right now. I'll give you an example of that.
Okay.
So at last Inbound conference, as as anyone who knows went, because it was such a weird timing. Yeah. It was the day after Election Day. The conference opened the day after Election Day. I actually gave a talk on the marketing aspects of the presidential election. And my talk was Clinton, Bush, Trump, Sanders, lessons from the marketing lessons from the presidential election. And so at the time I was writing the talk, I thought, 90% sure Clinton's going to win. I wrote it as if Clinton was going to win.
Just assume that.
But I had gone to, right, everyone was saying, the polls were saying, the pundits were saying, that's what it felt like. That's what everyone was thinking was going to happen based on data. So, but I had gone to multiple Trump events and multiple Clinton events, and had done lots of blog posts and videos and talks about all the candidates. So I was prepared, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, like, oh my God, I got to rewrite my blog post, I got to rewrite my speech, which I did, and really quickly did. And then I pushed out a blog post. It went out at 4:30 in the morning, so literally just 3 or 4 hours after they called the election for Trump. Yeah. And I said the best marketer was elected president. And then 4 or 5 hours after that, actually it was 7 hours after that, I'm on the stage at Inbound with a couple thousand people watching me give this presentation about why Trump won. And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to use some real targeted advertising. So I just created the headline, pushed it on Twitter, pushed it on Facebook, and just said, the best marketer was elected president, and then pushed them to my blog post. And I just ran it for a day, right. A couple $100, and then that drives more traffic, because that blog post had a half-life. Yeah. It was a really, really important blog post for a couple hours, and it was like everyone has moved on and drawn their own conclusions. Yeah. And in fact, it sold. I ended up getting speaking inquiries as a result of doing that. Nice. And I ended up booking some paid speaking gigs from people who wanted me to give presentations about it, all because I combined owning content with buying content. So that was an example in my own life how even the guy who wrote the book about how to create content is still sometimes renting it. Right.
That makes a lot of sense, and that makes me think of your analogy with Uber. It isn't that you use Uber for your commute every single day.
Right.
It's just occasionally you're in some spot.
I know I'm going to go out drinking. I don't want to drive home.
Right.
So that's when I rent a car, thank you very much. Not actually physically rent a car, but rent a car and a driver to
Yeah, sure. And so with paid ad pushes, when you've done that, is it always just that short couple hours, 1 or 2 day window?
For me personally, that's typically how I use it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I use it as an amplifier to real-time marketing. So that's how it works for me, because I think that marketers who use paid too much, it's all subjective, I understand, but right. My perspective, who use it too much, it becomes kind of like a crack cocaine, where you got to keep paying to keep getting your fix, to keep getting the result that you're looking for, whatever that result might be. People who raise their hand and become a lead or whatever it might be. The salespeople are breathing down your neck. We need some more leads. Like, oh my God! So you look in your budget, another $1,000, because you know that if you spend another $1,000, you're likely to get X number of more leads or X number more views or whatever it is that you use as your metric. So you're like people kind of become addicted to it, and the more you end up doing that, the less resources, both time and money, you're capable to push to the ownership side of creating something valuable, whether it's an infographic or a blog post or a YouTube video, something that will generate results forever, in perpetuity, as long as... Yeah. I've got blog posts that I wrote, I started my blog in 2004. I've got blog posts I wrote more than a decade ago that are still generating search results traffic. And wow. Google's sending me traffic as a result of these ancient blog posts. And sometimes embarrassing. So, oh my God, what did I write like in 2007 about this topic?
Yeah, internet was a different place then.
It was. Like, oh, yay, Second Life. I was like, oh, God.
Yeah. So it's funny you should mention here. I actually printed out our LinkedIn questions.
Excellent.
On the topic of crack cocaine, Sam Balter says, ads are an attractive and seemingly addictive demand generation play for corporate marketing teams. If they have an ad budget, how can they use it to supplement their content marketing efforts?
Yeah, so I think that ad budget becomes a way to amplify the things that you're doing around content creation. That's a very clever way, I think, of using an ad budget. And so every time you have a new blog post, maybe experiment with how can we push people to that blog post or a video, or the CEO is going to give a speech somewhere. Could we maybe attract attention to the live stream of that CEO's speech by maybe amplifying that a little bit?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a clever use of advertising. And again, it's the whole idea of you get addicted. I think that's the questioner said, addicted, right?
Addicted.
You get addicted to it. Yeah, you do get addicted to it. And there's something else that's so important, which I don't think we're going to solve, but I want to push it out there. Okay, so marketing budgets are all done on a monthly or quarterly, annually marketing budget. And so therefore advertising and content creation and whatnot is accounted for by the smart numbers people, the CPAs and the MBAs and all those very smart people, unlike me. Those people are accounting for marketing on an expense basis, a monthly expense basis. So how much did you spend this month? I spent this much amount of money this month. How much did you get this month? Oh, I got this number of leads. I got this number of sales. I got this number of results. The problem when you tie a marketing expense to a marketing result on a monthly or quarterly basis, it's giving you false data. So I'm on a tear to change that. I want content to be accounted for as an asset of a business rather than an expense of a business. It's not going to happen. I just don't see it happening. But we're filming right now in this wonderful spot here at HubSpot, and the camera that we're filming with and the lights that are shining on us, those are assets and accounted for in a different way on a balance sheet than a marketing budget. Yeah. I believe a blog post is also an asset. I believe a URL with a website on it is also an asset. I believe that a video is also an asset. And I think a collection of all of those things, I think HubSpot University, which is an awesome, huge set of content, is an asset for the company that is worth potentially millions of dollars and should be accounted for in that way. Some of the equivalents, so we talked about the cameras and the lights and here in the studio, but a trademark or a patent in a balance sheet is considered an asset. I don't see any difference between a patent and a website.
Yeah.
HubSpot.com, all that content on it, or HubSpot University, all that content on it. And so I wonder if there's any, and if anyone out there is doing this, I'd love to hear it, but any forward-looking companies are actually accounting for content as an asset, because that content that you create today, it's not just generating leads today,
right,
or this month. It's generating leads next quarter or next year or 10 years from now.
10 years, as you just said.
10 years from now.
Yeah.
And so I think that because advertising and marketing has been exclusively rentals for the longest period of time, it made sense for ages to just, marketing is an expense, marketing is spend, marketing is expense. But the creation of content, I believe, should be accounted for on a balance sheet in a different way. And that would allow us, I think, to psychologically get ourselves as marketers, but also our bosses, to come around to the idea that that you're dealing with an asset, and maybe it allows us to be able to talk to them in a different way about what it is we're doing as marketers. In the same way that a scientist can talk about the patent that they're creating that could potentially be worth millions, hundreds of millions, or billions of dollars. A certain patent can be worth huge amounts of money.
Sure.
And you pay lots of scientists to invent that patent. Same thing's true of marketing content. I absolutely believe that.
Yeah? I love that.
It's not. You think it's going to happen?
I hope so eventually.
I mean, I don't know accounting rules. I'm sure that there's I'm sure that the Association of Accountants, whatever it's called, General Accepted Accounting Principles, GAAP, probably accounting principles would not allot content to be an asset. But I would like to see it perhaps on a phantom set of books.
Yeah, well,
even if it can't be done from the perspective of the legality of it.
Yeah, I think as time goes on, as companies catch up to the sorts of ideas that people like you espouse, things do change. You've been blogging for more than a decade. You can see, like, yeah, if I had just accounted for those pieces of content 10 years ago, I would be very short-sighted.
Right.
The companies that didn't start blogging till 5 years ago haven't had that realization yet. And eventually, as time goes on, as the bleeding edge becomes the old, outdated, I don't know what to call the exiting edge, maybe.
Maybe they'll be thinking.
Maybe they'll figure it out.
And I'm just thinking out loud here. I wonder if there's like some kind of way that you could figure out that two sets of data cross. That in an early stage of your company's life, maybe you advertise a little bit more because you're not as well known to generate leads, spend a lot of money in ads. Create original content, but that's going to come up, shorter.
Yeah.
But then over time, a couple of years, you're going to start to invest a lot more in original content, a lot less because the content you created in the beginning is going to continue to work for you.
Right, and as it ramps up and you build 10-year track record of being a trusted resource, the advertising becomes less necessary.
Perhaps.
Yeah,
I mean, I know I'm still getting visits to my site and links to my stuff and people who look at my social. I'm getting way more on stuff I created in the past than I am on the current stuff. Maybe that means my current stuff stinks. I don't know, but no, actually, it's because there's so much of the older stuff.
Right.
1,500 blog posts. Each one of them is the search results.
Wow.
Driving people.
Yeah. So coming back to this idea of ad spend being an addiction, what are the signs of trouble? When does someone need to admit get themselves in that 12-step program? Admit there's a problem.
The advertiser's 12-step program.
Yeah. When is it time for that?
I think it's time for that when external pressures cause you to do something in your gut you don't feel is right. What I mean by that, the vice president of sales banging you over the head, I need leads. And you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to take some more money. I'm going to, crank it at some form of advertising because generally I can expect I'm at least going to get enough that the salesperson doesn't beat me over the head.
Yeah.
So that's certainly one of the signs. I think it does come partly from the gut. I do also think that people have told me, I don't advertise enough to have the data myself, but people who advertise a lot and have a lot of data have told me that in the beginning when advertising networks get started, generally there's some great results. Like I know when I first started advertising on Facebook, some Facebook targeted ads, I had great results. When I first started advertising, when Twitter first opened up their paid advertising program, I had some great results. And I've experimented with it occasionally, here and there, ever since they started, and I have not had great results recently. So
it really is like a drug then.
I mean, yeah,
early
maybe
on, get a great
early
high
on you don't need very much, and just you spend $10, you're fine. So maybe Twitter and Facebook are both figuring out how much they can feed you based on your budget. I don't know. I'm not an expert in the algorithms, and I don't do enough of it myself to be an expert in have enough personal data to be able to know what I'm seeing from a data perspective, but anecdotally from dozens and dozens of people who I've spoken with at events and through social, everyone without fail has said that it's becoming less effective. So that means I would say another sign that maybe you need to go to the 12-step program is that you're spending more and more and more money for the same result. So if you need, 50 leads a month, whatever it is, and all of a sudden you're realizing you're spending way more per lead to get those things on a paid program, a renting program, then I think then you probably have to be thinking about whether this is the right approach or not.
Got it.
So those are two I thought of. What you must think of some other. What are some other ways?
No, I think this is interesting.
You need to get on a 12-step.
Well, just based on what you said about what you've done, where your ad spend is for a very limited amount of time, for a very specific, when you have timely content, you want to get ahead of the curve, whether you're newsjacking or whatever. It seems like if that's what you're doing, if that's your whole ad spend plan, then you never get enough to need the 12-step program, right?
Maybe,
like
maybe.
It never, you're not in any danger, it doesn't sound like, of ad spend becoming a monthly expense that is increasing and increasing.
For me personally, that's correct.
Personally.
For me personally, that's correct, because I use it as a supplement.
Right.
And when if I have a blog post that, wow, that's doing pretty well, and something there, that might be one that I might put a little juice against as well.
Yeah.
I also will sometimes do it when I have a new book or a new speech or something new to me that is worth pushing a little bit.
Yeah. You keep emphasizing this is what you do. Do you think it would be different for other companies?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, because I think it's probably pretty similar, and I always suggest to people that they do something like this. And the people who have shared with me the data that they've experienced have said to me that when they do rent as supplemental, it's like, whew, this is a different kind of marketing than spending a lot of money on ads.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of just getting back to the idea that it's not either or. And if it were either or, it's like I'm all way down, coming down on the side of owning.
Yeah, for sure.
Create your own content and push it out there, absolutely.
Got it.
And it took me a while to come around to the idea that a hybrid is a good approach. It really did take me a while to do that.
What made you turn the corner?
So many people were saying that it was working in it, so I saw it working for myself.
Ah, there you go. Yeah. Can't argue with results.
And then also, exactly, can't argue with the data. But then also recognizing that there is a strategy to put the two together. That you can say, okay, we need to get 500 people to our conference, or we're launching a new product. We want to get as much people to know about that new product as possible. Or there's this news story where our chief scientist has a very particular and important take on that news story that we want to get into the market quickly. Those are all good reasons to spend a bit of money and put it behind amplifying what you're already doing in the content creation space.
Yeah, and that all feels really inboundy to me, because you're contributing to the conversation. You're not trying to get around shortcut your way through the effort of making content. You're timely and you're relevant, and you're just trying to increase the reach.
Yeah, and I know there's people who've done extremely well with product creation and sales around things in the news, and 100% of that comes from paid.
Yeah.
So, for example, like if there's some meme that's trending, create a T-shirt around that meme, have it made. There's companies that you can make those instantly, have them made instantly, and you can have a storefront within seconds to sell that T-shirt with the meme, and then you advertise it through Facebook and Google and Twitter, whatever else, and all of a sudden that meme on a T-shirt, people have told me they've made lots of money by doing that kind of thing. So there's ways, there are things that you can do that make sense.
Yeah. Cool. Moving on to another question from the LinkedIn. Our friend Stephanie Cass-Stevens.
Hey, Stephanie.
Actually commented 3 separate times.
Nice.
So she says, "Oh man, I love this topic. I think paid can definitely help when done right. But man, keeping up with all the constant changes in paid promo, especially social, is tough.
It is tough.
How do you recommend keeping up with the best practices for social ads, like Twitter's new $100 a month format, so you don't get caught wasting money in a set it and forget it situation?"
Yeah, wow, Stephanie, that's an amazing question. It's tough. It is tough. And I saw that $100 a month thing come through, and I investigated it. I haven't tried it myself. I think follow people who are a lot smarter than I am around that. That's for sure. I mean, I think it's really, really important to figure out where those are best spent. And I don't have the right answer to that, but I think that creativity around experimentation is an interesting way to do it. And I tend to be I tend to go counter to what a lot of people say around things like that and just try it and see if it works. And, I want to hear what the experts have to say. That's important. But, and what I mean by that is, for example, I remember when search engine marketing really first became really big and important and popular, maybe a decade ago, and everyone was saying, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And I looked at that and I was like, I don't want to do any of that. I'm going to do something completely different. Because people were advocating all of the under-the-covers stuff. It's about taking this word and tweaking it this way and putting it in this little tag and this sort of stuff.
Hiding it in the background.
Yeah, and doing this and doing that. And I'm like, all right, but I'm just going to create an ebook on this topic. And then, like 1 million people saw it. It's like, well, that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
So let's try that again. And, that kind of thing. And so I don't have a brilliant answer to this question, but I do feel that experimentation and cleverness goes a long way. But I also think you have to follow the experts. Like, no human can now understand how those Google algorithms work. So trying to re-engineer search is really tough. You got to follow the people who are living and breathing that 24/7 to figure that out. And I would say that probably the same thing is true about understanding how those different ad networks work. How does Facebook ads work? How does Twitter ads work? LinkedIn ads? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you have to figure out from people who are very, very smart and do that all the time what you can learn from them. Hopefully, those people who are experts in renting content are also creating content that we can consume. So that's an interesting question. Do people who are experts on renting content also create content?
We can hope.
Yeah, we hope so, right?
Second question from Stephanie.
Would that mean that they were? Would that mean they were going counter to their suggestions? I wonder. If you're an expert on advertising, paid advertising, but you create content, generate your leads for your paid content. Never mind.
Yeah,
we're going down a rat hole here.
Yeah, but I mean, if I think the experts on content creation are advocating some mix of paid.
Right.
I don't trust anyone who leans to either extreme on any issue.
Yeah.
So like,
no Republicans, no Democrats.
Yeah, find the people in the middle.
Because some of this stuff actually is just like the political world.
Yeah.
Right? There's like, global warming is caused by humans. Global warming is not caused by humans, right? Whatever. I mean, the different arguments, around creationism versus, Republican versus Democrat, whatever, and in other countries, the same thing around politics, are sometimes arguments you can't win.
Yeah.
So partly this topic is discussing arguments that you can't necessarily win.
Yeah, well, and when we started out at the beginning, and you were talking about how, when inbound marketing was first introduced, it had to be as extreme as possible just to get through.
It did.
As you were saying that, I thought of the dance politicians do when they're courting one party. They have to be sort of extreme, left or right on the issues, and then once they get the nomination and they're a candidate on the national scale, they have to come to the center. And I think that may be where inbound is right now.
It might be right. Yeah. I think that probably is right, because I think most people I run across understand. They may not know the term inbound marketing, but they understand the concept of inbound marketing.
Yeah.
They get it. They realize there's something going on in social. There's something going on in search. There's something going on with the ways that people are buying products today. And because of that, they recognize for their business that they have to understand this stuff.
Yeah.
That was not true 10 years ago. People did not recognize they had a problem.
Yeah.
They just spent money on ads.
Right. Cool. Well, anyone who's watching, be sure to drop some questions in for us in the comments there on Facebook, that format we're using. I'm going to continue on our LinkedIn questions here. Another one from Stephanie. Would you suggest waiting until something is performing well to pay to promote it on social, or do you recommend specifically creating things to pay to promote?
My strong preference is to see if something works and then promote it. That's what I prefer to do. That's what I recommend that people do. just get a sense of whether it's working.
Yeah.
And see how is this worth putting a few $100s or $1,000 around or not, and see how it performs in the beginning. Or put a small amount on it, look at the numbers, and then decide whether you're going to put a bigger amount against it.
Yeah, it sounds like, to me, based on what you're saying, that's a necessary component of any strategy. Even those people you were mentioning who put memes on T-shirts, if a meme isn't making it to the front page of Reddit, maybe wait a minute, see if it goes the distance before you start selling T-shirts.
Right. But at the same time, you want to be quick.
Right.
Because by the time other people figure it out, it's probably not going to sell as well as a T-shirt. I don't know.
I don't know.
Things happening so quickly now.
Yeah.
You're watching a live television show, and someone makes a funny mistake, and you can smell it's going to become a meme.
Yeah, and
it's
it already
now
is
by the
time
time
you check.
Right, now is the time.
Yeah,
and by the time it hits Reddit, it might be too late to make, because you're going to make thousands of dollars in a day, or it's not going to happen with that kind of approach.
Yeah, that's true. You're watching the Olympics or a presidential debate or whatever. Someone makes some embarrassing error. People are going to be immediately looking for the T-shirt or the
binders of women. I want a T-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Final question from Stephanie. One more. Any recommendations for paid promo of content in a typically non-social industry, or where your target personas in the industry aren't typically active on social?
Yeah, that's a tougher one. I don't have a strong suggestion there, but I did have a very interesting conversation with someone who is a marketer at a very traditional B2B kind of business. They sell things. I mean, machine-like things that small numbers of people in company. There's only like 3 or 4 people in an entire big company that would want one of these things.
Right.
And there's only certain industries that buy these things.
Right.
And they're a lot of money.
Right.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy one of these things.
Yeah.
And so what he was telling me is that they've had huge luck going way retro old school and sending physical packages through the mail. Actually, I think they use FedEx, but through some kind of physical delivery box. And then when you open it up, there's like a gift and then an invitation for them to have a consultation with their expert. And that's the stuff that we used to do when I started in marketing a long time ago.
Yeah.
That was because we didn't have the web.
Right.
And I was in B2B marketing, and it was like, how do you reach these people? And it was really hard. And every once in a while, a couple times a year, we would do these physical direct mail things. And they kind of went extinct for a long time with many marketers because of the web. It's like, well, why would I spend? And this guy was telling me he was spending $100 per package. When you add the FedEx fee, buying the list, and
the stuff
and
that's in the box,
thingamajig that was in there. There's like some device that was in there, and then the whole thing, and then they were sending it out to a lot of people. So it was a pretty big. But he said he was getting amazing hit rates. Like double-digit response rates, right? Double-digit response rates. So I would say that I would call that paid advertising.
Yeah.
And it's in the same bucket of the conversation we're having here. So my answer for Stephanie would be go old school, maybe. Go way old school. And I remember hearing somebody give a talk once about the value of thank you notes, written thank you notes. So everyone dashes off an email, thanks very much, that was great. But a written, physical thank you note on a nice piece of stationery that's mailed with a stamp.
Yeah.
What do you lick them? I don't even know. A stamp? What's that? And it goes off, and then people open it. Wow, that's a real physical thank you note. How cool is that? So maybe going retro is the approach with your rented.
That is so interesting. A caveat I would actually put on that, a company I worked at probably 2010, 2011, was a SaaS company, but in an older industry. And we tried that, and I think if you've got a digital solution, like this old school model is just not a good...
I probably wouldn't try it in a new technology, in anything that uses the web, I think I probably wouldn't try it.
Yeah.
But if you're selling air conditioning systems, or you're selling carpeting, or you're selling, whatever it might be, some really physical and an old style B2B kind of a business, then hey, maybe it's worth a shot.
Yeah.
Because everyone else is trying to do something different.
Yeah. Well, and once again, probably start with experimentation before you just decide, we're going to spend $100 per lead on this list of a million leads or whatever. It's, always experiment. So Lauren Hintz says, social media marketing seems to have become a pay-to-play channel. How can I get reach in Facebook and Twitter without paying for it?
Interesting. A lot of people have been thinking of it as a paid channel. In terms of Facebook, we're doing Facebook Live now, and I've spoken with dozens and dozens of people who've had very good luck with Facebook Live. So I would suggest it was Lauren, right? I would suggest to Lauren that if you haven't already experimented with Facebook Live as a way to get attention on Facebook, that's certainly worth doing. And also Facebook Live is an interesting thing to then put a little bit of ad juice around to boost the Facebook live stream after it's been out, is something that's a good approach. And then with Twitter, I've found that a great way to generate attention on Twitter is to use it as a way to link to other content that's already out there. So the main content would be, say, a blog post or a video or an infographic. And then Twitter becomes the place that you're pointing more people to that content. And those sorts of approaches can help to get away from the whole crack cocaine thing of just spending money on those social channels. One of the challenges here is that those companies keep changing their algorithms, Facebook, Twitter, whatnot. And I used to be able to predict pretty accurately with a tweet or a Facebook post how many people would see it, just based on experience of, when I post this kind of thing, I'm likely to get about this much. I have no clue anymore. Because if the Facebook algorithm doesn't decide you're worthy, it doesn't put you in, and I'm not an expert again, I'm just going from experience, but they won't put you in the places that you need. But Facebook Live has tended, although some people have told me it started to change a little bit, but has tended to be surfaced more. Video is surfaced more readily on
especially
Facebook.
Native video.
Native video, exactly. And by native video, we mean video that actually was uploaded to Facebook, either as a video that you already created that was uploaded, or a video stream that you're making within Facebook. It tends to get more juice through the Facebook algorithm than if you were to point to a YouTube video. Right. Because you're basically... And that's another answer to Lauren's question, is that these social networks are all these islands, right? Yeah. And they don't like each other. They don't play nice with each other. It's they're like separate entities, And as soon as you go from one social network and try to point to another one, and I'm including Google there as a social network, even though not technically, although G+ is, I suppose, and YouTube, I suppose, is considered a social network, but taking when you go in Facebook or Twitter and try to link to a YouTube video, they're like, no, it's YouTube. That's not us. Yeah, no. We might put it up there a little bit. Yeah. And I'm not an expert in all the nuances of the algorithms, but that's my sense. So I would say, Lauren, push out video in Facebook, see if that works, and then use Twitter to point to other content.
Great. Let's take some questions that are coming in live here.
You can read that?
I can read that.
Oh my God, I need your glasses.
No, you probably need your glasses.
My glasses are for reading, but I think I would have to... Oh, I can read it now.
No, Simon says, I'm curious to hear how Mr. Meerman Scott listens to his audience and explores and experiments with new editorial lines.
That, my friend, who's that come from? Simon? Simon is a very clever man because that's exactly how I figure out what my new books are going to be about. Here's what I do. I pay very close attention to my social networks pay very close attention to the questions I get. Like, this is a great question. The questions that come up when either in a blog post, let's say, or people asking questions on my social networks, or doing something like this, or if I'm on a stage and people ask questions. And if I see patterns come up, I say, wow, there's something going on there. So there's a lot of people who have asked me about this, or I'm noticing a lot of things around that, or I'm seeing a pattern emerging that other people aren't seeing. I wonder what that's all about. And so, that's happening to me all the time. And then I start to triangulate the ideas that I'm hearing and seeing in these different places. And then from there, the next thing I'll do is I might experiment a little bit on Twitter. I just tweet out some things and see if anything happens. But sooner or later, and usually it's sooner, I'll do a think piece blog post. And in fact, that's why we're here, because I wrote a think piece blog post that was owning versus renting content, right? And so I just kind of explore an idea, and then if I get a lot of comments, it's like, wow, there's something going on there, and I might do another one. And then if I find myself geeking out about this and writing more and more about it, I might then, I might take a 5 or 10 minute slot in a 1 hour keynote and see if I can riff on it in this presentation. Put it in there, and at lunch, the lunch after I speak, does anyone mention it?
Yeah.
Is that something people reacted to? And then from there, if all of those things are kind of lining up, I've got a book. Right? And I've written 10 books, and almost all of them emerged that way. The book that became The New Rules of Marketing and PR, what I saw so clearly, like in huge bold letters, was that marketing is not about advertising, it's about content creation. No one was talking about that. No one. This was in 2005.
Yeah.
And even before that, my first book was on that subject, came out in 2005. So this is more like 2002, 2003, I was thinking about this topic.
Wow.
And it was like so clear, I gotta write about that. And then that happened to me, over the years a couple more times. And I'm struggling with it now, Simon. I don't know where I am with this, but
what's next?
I gotta figure out what the next one is, and that's I have a couple of ideas I'm sniffing around, but I never tell people that I'm thinking about it.
No.
I just
absolutely not.
But it's a great way to come up with content, is to sort of figure out what's on people's minds.
Awesome. Thank you, Simon. I learned a lot there.
That was a great question. Oh, and I do the ladder approach too, and it kind of I call it the ladder approach.
Yeah.
Tweet leads to a blog post, leads to longer form, which could be part of a speech. Could be a video, could be a long-form Medium post, could be an ebook or a slide share, and then the final top of the ladder becomes the book.
The book.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And they all have to, you have to just have people who want to go higher on the ladder.
Yeah.
Right? And like, that tweet just fell flat. Nothing happened. Well, I guess I'm not going to keep going in that direction.
Yeah. Okay, so Janie says, what is the next big thing happening with inbound?
The next big thing happening with
feeling
inbound.
Clairvoyant?
There's two things that have been going through my mind, and you and I talked about one of these when we first got into the room. I'm a huge believer in the convergence of inbound sales and inbound marketing, where we marketers generally in the past have been responsible for creating content at the top of the funnel.
Yeah.
And then generally, the content for the top of the funnel generates leads, and the leads go to, this is a very simplistic approach, but then the leads go to the salespeople, and the salespeople are responsible for signing getting the individuals down to the point where they're ready to sign for the business. And in a consumer market, to drive them to a store where they go to a place and buy something, or an e-commerce site where they push the button to buy something. So I think that those lines are totally blurring, and that marketers have a role in the entire buying process, all the way down to the point where they're ready to sign a contract, if it's a B2B business, or they're ready to push a button if it's an e-commerce-based business. So thinking about, we're marketers, or we're salespeople, I think is an artificial demarcation in the world today, and I wonder how to break down those silos, because when you think about it, if you create a video or you create an infographic or you create a blog post, that's awesome content that serves as marketing. In other words, many people are seeing that piece of content. So it's marketing. You're reaching an entire market through that content. But then also an individual salesperson, I as a salesperson, can use that content by curating it to you as my potential customer. I can send that same video that 10,000 people saw as marketing content. I can curate that to you if I'm a salesperson, say, you really ought to check out this video. It's really important for you based on the question you just asked, because there's a great dialogue in this video where we talk to a customer, and you should check it out.
Right.
So I've curated that video to you because I think that's going to help you to get driven down the sales cycle, down the sales process. Maybe you're going to close the deal as a result of that one video.
Yeah.
And so that convergence is, I think, fascinating. So that's the first thing I've been spending a lot of time thinking about recently. I've written a couple books on marketing. I've written a book on sales, and I kind of wish I had put them together somehow. But, the second thing I'm thinking about is, the whole thing about how artificial intelligence is going to be a driver of marketing. And we've spent part of our conversation today thinking about using the various ad platforms to generate results. And I think that conversation we probably wouldn't even have in a few years, that a lot of that will be artificial intelligence driven.
Definitely. And
you basically, and I'm sure that there's lots of smart companies that are working on this, but how can you take data based on what you've got, put it into a black box of some kind, and then have that generate the right kind of ads that you should be pushing out, where you don't need to use your brain power to do that. You just trust the machine to be able to not only figure out what to do today, but to learn what to do tomorrow or the next day.
And to allocate funds appropriately.
Allocate funds accordingly and change headlines accordingly. And, with Google AdWords, to test headlines behind the scenes. You don't even know what the machine is testing in terms of headlines, and then it decides this is the best headline, and then that headline goes. That kind of thing. I think it is happening, and I think that it's pretty cutting edge now. But I think many of us will be doing that soon, if we're not doing it already.
Yeah, I believe that too. I hope so. I think it's exciting.
It's exciting, a little bit scary, but I think that's always been a great thing about new technology, is that it does feel like often the newest stuff is a little bit scary. But I think that's good. I think that means that people who get a little scared, many of them won't try it. So if you're the first one out of the deck trying it, that might give you an advantage.
Yeah. All right, and Scott says, when starting off on inbound content creation as a marketing/sales strategy, how long does it take to start seeing results, i.e. leads coming in to replace outbound approach?
Yeah, good question, Scott. It's hard to predict that, with any certainty, but it is a gradual approach unless you have a big hit, and that is not as unusual as it might sound. If you have just a great idea for an infographic, and you can visually represent in an infographic some complex data that you or your business or the scientist in your company, whatever it might be, helps you to create this. And it just does a fantastic job of describing something that people are struggling with. Like right now, AI, we just talked a moment ago about artificial intelligence in marketing. There probably is an infographic out there that explains that, but I want to see it.
Right.
If anyone knows what it is, please send it to me, because I will retweet it. But that kind of thing could mean that all of a sudden you've got hundreds of thousands of people visiting and downloading that infographic, which is sharing who you are, and maybe some of them will be interested in learning more, and maybe they will become leads. So you can have these content hits. I've had maybe 6 or 8 in my career. So how often do they come? I don't know. It depends on what you really mean by hit. I'm talking about like 1 million downloads kind of thing.
Right.
I've had 6 or 8 in roughly 15 years that I've been on my own with my own business.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? One every 2 years? Doesn't sound like very much. But these are for mega hits. I've had a lot of like minor kind of did pretty well things. But ones where a lot of people saw it was maybe one a year. So I think it's important to shoot for that.
Yeah.
And I would recommend that you use the same philosophy as a venture capitalist does. So Scott, what I mean by this venture capitalist thing is that a venture capitalist doesn't invest in companies because they think every company is going to be a massive hit and get acquired or go public on the stock market. They know that not every company will. They expect maybe 5 or 10% will, whatever their internal numbers are, depending on how they invest. And they know that some of the companies they invest in will go bankrupt. And they know some of the companies that they invest in might return a little bit of money, but it won't be a massive amount.
Yeah.
I look at content creation the same way. And I look at it as like a portfolio of content. So I've got a couple of infographics, I've got a couple of slide shares, I've got some videos, I've got some social streams, I've got some blog posts, and combined, I'm like a venture capitalist with all of these different bits of content that I spend time creating. And maybe over the course of the year, I might produce, not including things like tweets, but I might produce 100 pieces of content in a year, just me personally for my own stuff. And I am hopeful one becomes a mega hit. Lots of people see, millions of people see. A few of them, 10,000, 20,000 people see, 30,000 people, that's great, good solid win, from the baseball metaphor, hitting singles, right? That's great. Hitting doubles, that's great.
Yeah.
One grand slam a year, and then a few of them, I'll put them out like nothing, crickets. I mean, I thought this was going to be a great blog post. Nobody cares, right? Nothing happens, like nothing.
Happens to the best of us, I guess. That's good to hear.
Man, it's brutal. It's like, is it that bad an idea? Like no one tweeted, no one commented. It was like just like 30 views. It's just sitting there. So that's how I would look at it. And I think you always shoot for the hit. And I think that you make it timely, the newsjacking thing we talked about earlier. And then I would expect over a period of months, Scott, that those leads will come in. And here's one more point. We haven't talked about this at all, just a content strategy point. Don't talk about your company, don't talk about your products, don't talk about your services.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are used to the paid approach, the renting approach, come from a background, or at least they learned around a model of hyping product, right? Because a lot of advertising is product-based. Buy our product, 20% off, click here, whatever.
Yeah.
That's what advertising typically has been, broadly speaking.
Yeah.
But generally, content creation is more about understanding your buyer personas and then creating content that will be valuable for them, helping to solve problems for them, helping to create the information that they will find interesting as they're going through the buying journey about deciding what they want to spend their money on, or what company they want to do business with. Right. So another important aspect of that journey from paid to owning is that when you're creating content that you want to own, it's not just about your products and services. It's very little about your products and services. It's mostly about the things that will be important for your buyers, the things that will help them as they're thinking about the problems that you might be able to solve for them.
Yeah, and then if 1 million people download it,
there you go.
They'll
right?
find you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly right.
Great. Coming in at the end here, and we're getting a whole bunch squeaking here at the deadline. Carrie says, in terms of creating engagement to your audience, how would be the best practice to select a platform for a business that is not very acquainted with digital marketing? Okay,
good question. So I would look at two things, two important things. The first one is, where are your buyers? What platform are your buyers likely to be on? And that's something that you really need to figure out. You need to interview representatives of your buyer personas. You need to just understand, are they on LinkedIn? Do they participate in any particular LinkedIn groups? Are they on Facebook? Are they on Twitter? Are they on Snapchat? Are they likely to, what are the places that they're likely to be? And depending on the industry or the business or the buyer persona, the job function of the people you're trying to reach, they may be more active in one social network than another social network. That's the first point. Actually, I'll add a third one. The second point is what type of content does your business lend itself to? I recently interviewed a guy called Gary Kohner. He runs a surf school, and he's built his entire business on Instagram because it's very visual. He takes shots of surfers, pushes them out, and people love to see shots of surfers, and it drives people to his business. He runs Nantucket Surf School. And so there might be a particular social network for Carrie based on the type of product or service their company provides. And the third point, I think, is probably the most important, and that is, what do you like to do as a marketer, right? I mean, this is fun. We're doing a video for you right now. This is great. I'm actually working here. It sounds more like fun, right? So some organizations and some people naturally enjoy the medium of creating a video, which we're doing right now. Yeah. Other people podcasting. Other people. I mean, I love to write. So. And it was a struggle, but I've gotten okay at it. But not everyone likes to write. So a lot of times people are reluctant to go down the own side of the house because they automatically think it means they have to write. It doesn't mean you have to write. Content creation can be video, it can be podcasts, it can be infographics, it can be photographs. Lots of other forms of content besides the written word.
Yeah. Great. We have about 3 minutes left here.
So maybe do a lightning round.
Okay, so this one's relevant. David, how in heaven's name do you keep up with the questions and answers you receive on social media?
So I really try my best to answer everything that comes through. And normally I'm reasonably good at that. And how I do it is that I do it in downtime. So if I arrive a little bit early to a meeting, I arrived a little bit early here at the HubSpot offices, I just sit down, grab my phone, see what's happening on my social networks. I can bang off a couple answers. I can retweet a few people, bang, we're done. Yeah. If I'm waiting in line in the store, like waiting in line to check out at the supermarket or something, got a couple of moments. I flew back from Colorado to Boston yesterday. I was sitting on the plane, had a few minutes before they closed the door, checking my social feeds. So I don't carve out, here's the 2 hours I'm going to do. But it's more like 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there.
Great. From Laurent, if you have 1,000 followers on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, you don't have 1,000 followers. How do you know the amount?
I don't understand the question. Does that mean there's overlap?
Yes, that's my guess.
Okay. I don't know. Don't know the answer to that question.
There you go. Fair enough. Bettina.
The other thing that's interesting about Laurent's question is that some people go dormant. Right? So I've got 100 and something or other thousand followers on Twitter, but I know that some of the people who followed me in 08, 09, 2010 have not kept their Twitter feed up. Right. And so are they a follower? I don't know. They chose to follow me one day, but they haven't used Twitter in 5 years. Yeah. So good question, Laurent. There's lots of nuances to that question.
Yeah. And finally, this is going to be our last one. Bettina, in a B2B company, what would you suggest would be a rational percent of owned content versus rented content?
I don't like to put real percentages like that. It's really tough. But I would want to see that get to the point where it's 90% owned. Yeah. I don't know that you can do that cold turkey. Can you, stop taking the drug cold turkey? I'm not sure. But that's where I would want to point to. Yeah.
Well, and based on what you said, it sounds like it'll vary from business to business and industry to industry.
It will vary.
Experiment.
It's really hard to put an answer, a solid answer on that. But I would want to aim towards that, and then see where it goes.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we have time for. Thanks so much for doing this. If anyone wants to hit you up, what's your favorite platform?
Twitter's probably the easiest. DM Scott. Okay. a long time ago, I hit Facebook's limit of 5,000 friends, so I can't.
Interesting.
7 years ago or something like that. I mean, I hit the limit. So please don't send a friend request on Facebook because I can't accept it.
No good.
Happily become a contact on LinkedIn.
Great.
So LinkedIn me, no problem.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. It's great.